Doncic has not been able to shoot this entire quarter due to a wrist injury. Prpelic drives the lane, blocked! And I think that was Batum, and he may have saved the game.
One fraction away. Anyone but the 7'1" wingspan of Nicholas Batum. And Slovenia, the small country of Slovenia, are facing the US in a gold medal match for the Olympics. Although they didn't end up doing it, I don't think we should take for granted what they did and what they did to make history. And as someone who really enjoyed watching the Olympics basketball, Slovenia in particular is one of those teams, I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about how they did it and obviously the catalyst behind it, because I think there's one pretty obvious catalyst that deserves a lot of credit alongside some other guys as well who stepped up at crucial times. Now, Slovenia, a country of just over 2 million people, is trying to become the smallest country since 1936 to compete at the Olympics for men's basketball. Yeah, just a light 85 years ago, you have to go back in time to 1936 to find a time when there are countries smaller than Slovenia playing basketball at the Olympics. And to say the game was slightly different then would be an understatement. Do you want to guess what the scoring looked like? Yeah, that's what the scoring looked like, and those countries that were able to do it were Estonia and Latvia. And that alone meant that they would make history if they were able to make it through to the Olympics. However, it wasn't going to be easy because both Luka and Goran Dragic were unable to play in the World Cup qualifiers, which meant they were unable to make the World Cup, and it led to them finishing third in their group behind Spain and Montenegro. Montenegro finished above them the last time Luka and Goran Dragic didn't play with them. Now, why is this actually important? Well, this meant that the road to qualifying for the Olympics was just harder than it had to be because they didn't manage to qualify for the World Cup. And it also emphasizes that this is a team that is pretty similar now to what it was 2 years ago that didn't make the World Cup. They weren't able to finish above Montenegro without Luka Doncic. Goran Dragic would not be joining them for the Olympics qualifiers, but without Luka, they were unable to make the World Cup or beat Montenegro. That's what they did. Fast forward 2 years later, and they were left with a group of Angola and Poland, which seems pretty easy, right? I guess so, but Poland were actually the higher ranked team than Slovenia. Yes, that goes to show what they were doing without their star men, but they were a higher ranked team. So coming up against Angola in the first game, well, you might have expected that it was easy, and it was. They won 118-68. Luka dropped a light 13 points and 9 assists in just 17 minutes. And then coming up against Poland, who, as I mentioned, were the higher ranked team, a casual 35-point win with the likes of Prpelic chipping in and Luka dropping a light 18 and 10 in about 25 minutes. And that was the easy stuff. They topped the group as you would have expected with the likes of Doncic, with the likes of Prpelic, and the likes of Zoran Dragic and Vlatko Cancar, who all deserve some respect. Mike Tobey as well. I'll talk about those guys as well. They deserve some respect for what they were able to do, but Luka was the catalyst behind this, as you would have imagined, and he started off the qualifiers really well. Heading into the semifinals against Venezuela, again, another team you would have expected to beat, and they managed to do that. 23, 13, and 9 from Luka, which was so very close to a triple-double. And I'll talk about how rare triple-doubles are in just a second, but he came so close to a triple-double, but that didn't matter because they beat Venezuela pretty confidently, 98-70, and this left them with a very tough final game to make it into the Olympics, their toughest game to date, and it was against Lithuania. In case you don't know about the history of Lithuania, basketball mad country. Since 1992, they've made 7 straight Olympics and 7 straight Olympic quarterfinals. You know the only other team that has done that? Take a guess. Well, I'll let you figure that out. I think you know who the other team is, but that puts them on par, or at least that's who they've been keeping pace with. They've won medals before. They've got NBA players, Jonas Valanciunas, Domantas Sabonis, a rich history. This was being played in Lithuania, which, if you don't know the atmosphere at some of these Lithuanian games, not just for country, but for club as well. Žalgiris as well, if you've heard of them. So having to play away from home against Lithuania with a rich history and a couple of close to star level players and a lot of players that play across Europe, it wasn't going to be easy, but they ended up winning 96-85, and guys stepped up. The likes of Vlatko Cancar came up with some clutch threes and buckets off the dribble. But all of this was created by Luka Doncic, and it was a fantastic performance. 31 points, a 31-point triple-double, which, just to emphasize how rare that is when it comes to FIBA basketball. Now, I don't have the stats for qualifying games. I don't imagine there's been many triple-doubles in qualifying games because the game is slower, there's less minutes, and it's harder to record triple-doubles. That's that simple. But in terms of World Cup and Olympic basketball combined, which has been going on for 90 years, 3 triple-doubles. 3 triple-doubles combined. So to get one in qualifying, to send your team to the Olympics off a triple-double, a 31-point triple-double in Lithuania against one of the better teams in the world historically, kind of speaks to how special that was from Luka and how special a performance that was. And for Slovenia to come out on top, just huge. That in itself being the smallest country to do so in over 85 years. But they weren't done yet, because after the success of making it to the Olympics, obviously they wanted to win a gold. And Luka said it himself.
Luka, what would mean more to you? A gold medal with the Team Slovenia or NBA championship with the night?
I would say gold medal with Slovenia.
But yet again, Slovenia had their work cut out for themselves in a group alongside the 2 teams that had previously played off in the 2019 World Cup for gold and for silver, Argentina and Spain. And as you see by this graphic, these are teams with huge differences in population and huge differences in history when it comes to basketball, alongside Japan, the host nation, who have the likes of Rui Hachimura and Yuta Watanabe, some decent players as well. And a lot of us saw Game 1 against Argentina as a great test. There was a nice amount of hype around Slovenia given Luka and what he had been capable of doing, but Argentina have been one of the most consistent teams in the world for decades now, and as I mentioned, we're only 2 years removed from finishing second in the World Cup, led by the likes of Campazzo and Scola, alongside other NBA players like Gabriel Deck, Leandro Balmaro, and Lucas Vildoza. Argentina were a strong team on paper. Well, they might have had a strong team on paper, but Luka Doncic said, yeah, that paper stuff doesn't really matter when I'm on the court. He dropped 48 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists in his first Olympic Games that was only about a 30-minute game for him. Let me just repeat that one more time. 48 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists, which also prompted the Argentinian national coach to say he's the best player in the world. And after seeing someone do that to your national team that has been so good for so long, can you blame him? Because that is the second highest amount of points scored in an Olympics game. Second. And it took him 30 minutes to do it in his first game ever. But even more promising than Luka nearly breaking the record for most points in an Olympics game was Slovenia's overall play against Argentina. They looked great, they looked cohesive, they were stretching the floor, they hit a total of 17 threes, and in general, they just looked fantastic all across the board. And as a result, against Japan, who they were competitive in some games, but unfortunately Slovenia just had too much firepower. The likes of Dragic, the likes of Chancha, and Luka all stepped up, easily winning that game. And then heading into the final game of the group stages, the biggest game to date for them, yes, up against Spain, the team that finished first at the World Cup just 2 years ago, a team with Ricky Rubio, Marc Gasol, Pau Gasol, a ton of other guys that are really solid players. Both teams had won the first 2 games, and both teams were now matched up to win the group, which was very important because the United States, yeah, they were the team that you would face if you were to lose. And although there was some speculation, come on, everyone that had a brain knew that the US was still the team that you wanted to avoid. And if you could do that as long as possible, that's what you were going to try and do. And that's what Slovenia did. Coming up against Spain, Spain had a different tactic for Luka Doncic. They went with the box and one. Yeah, the full court pressing was done by Argentina. It was done by Japan. The full court pressing wasn't enough, so they went with the box in one alongside the full court press, and that limited Luka, but it also meant that other guys were able to step up with his playmaking and with other guys around him. It was impressive. The likes of Mike Tobey, who had a big game and was impressive all Olympics long. Vlatko Chancha, who again had a big game and was again impressive all throughout the qualifiers and all throughout the Olympics, hitting some big threes. All of these guys, despite the pressure on Luka Doncic and Spain's tactics, which held him to his worst game, should I say, over the course of the Olympics and the qualifiers, it wasn't enough because Slovenia stepped up as a team and managed to beat Spain, which was just a huge result. Given the size of the country, given the history of Spain, given what they'd been able to do just 2 years ago, winning the World Cup when Slovenia had not even made the World Cup, should I say, Spain topping the group when Slovenia finished below Montenegro in that group, that's the kind of turnaround that happens. And Luka Doncic obviously deserves a lot of credit for that, but some other guys stepped up. At this point, Slovenia had made it through the difficult part of qualifying and then beat both Argentina and Spain, which made the Germany game looked kind of easy in comparison, despite Germany having a competitive team. But for the most part, the game was as expected. Germany just weren't able to match Luka and Zoran Dragic. Zoran Dragic, the brother of Goran Dragic, who had a few big performances throughout the Olympics as well. But those guys were able to breeze through. Slovenia just looked crisp. Their ball movement continued to look good. And they were a team that, well, heading into the semi-finals against France, if you were to pick the two teams on form, as I said, let's not get silly. People were getting silly saying the US weren't still the danger team. They were still the danger team. Everyone with a brain knew that. But heading into the semi-finals, if you were to pick a 1A and a 1B, my 1A and 1B would have been Slovenia and France. Pick and choose which one you want, because Slovenia's offense was clicking. They were the best offense at the tournament. And then France was led by Rudy Gobert, Nicolas Batum. They had other guys, other NBA quality players, Evan Fournier, a number of players that were solid, and a very fantastic team that was clicking. These were the two form teams, and in the semi-finals, it was going to be a tough match, which it was. Now, the game started back and forth, which you would have expected. A lower scoring game than previous ones for Slovenia, given France's defense, and Luka was again forced to be a bit more of a facilitator, with him often facing full court presses, plus the help side defense from the likes of Batum and Gobert, with Batum particularly dominant defensively, recording a few blocks on him. However, it just seemed inevitable that Luka was going to flip the switch at some point, like we always see him do, with guys like Toby helping keep the Mavs in the game, particularly on that pick and roll connection. However, when Luka ran into a screen and seemingly hurt his wrist, that wasn't good. That was not good at all, because from that point onwards, he just wasn't 100%, and as a result, he was resorted to passing, which isn't the worst thing. Let's not forget, one of the best passers in the world. And heading into the final 5 minutes of the game was tied 78-78. A nation of nearly 70 million people versus a nation of just 2. Team with multiple NBA players versus a team with Luka and Vlatko Čančar. With 3 minutes left and the score separated by just 2 points, no team was really able to make the final shot. Slovenia was struggling to get that shot, with Luka resorted to just playmaking and no one else really being able to separate themselves. It was back and forth. It was a tough game. There was defense being played, but at the end of the day, there was some bad offense. And when Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot broke that scoring drought with the 3, making the game 98-85, that was ominous. That was not great for Slovenia. However, Prepelic came back, got an offensive foul on Evan Fournier, just an incredibly dumb offensive foul from Evan Fournier. He then hit one of his free throws. Evan Fournier went down the other end and turned over the ball. Prepelic then hit a 3, and then France go down the other end and miss another shot. So if you've kept up with us, 90-85 with a minute left, turnover, shot, 90-89, 20 seconds left on the clock. Slovenia, France, if they make a shot, they're through to a gold medal match against the US. And, well, Luka, ball in his hands. You see, he sees Batum. Batum slightly edges towards him, looking as though it's going to be a double team. He makes the read. He passes it to Prepelic. Prepelic looks like he's through. Batum, one wrong step from Batum. 2 inches shorter on the wingspan. If he just wasn't switched on for just a fraction of a second, Prepelic makes that layup and then hits 3 consecutive shots in a row and is a hero. They make the gold medal match, but Batum comes up with a historic block, and unfortunately Slovenia fall just short. Despite not playing at his best, it was still a great performance from Luka. He ended up with 18 assists to just 1 turnover. His shooting wasn't there. His offense, his scoring just wasn't there. It was something to do with the wrist, I imagine, but still, Slovenia came so close. And then heading into the bronze medal match, where I was expecting a really close match, Slovenia just weren't all there. As someone who watched every game of Australia's, every game of Slovenia's, they were not the same team. Luka was not the same player. He was not switched on. He was irritated. He just wasn't the same player, and Slovenia weren't clicking on all cylinders. Also, you got to give a lot of respect to Paddy Mills, because 42 points was just fantastic. The man was great. He was fantastic. But Slovenia, nonetheless, to go through the qualifiers, a tough qualifying group at that, to beat Lithuania, to prevent them from going to the Olympics and the quarterfinals for 7 straight Olympics, and to then beat Argentina, Spain, Germany, and come 1 point away from beating France. All teams that have had richer history, all teams that are hugely bigger countries. To do all of this in one Olympics with Luka the catalyst and some other guys stepping up, it deserves some credit, and I wanted to talk about that because I thought it was a fantastic run from Slovenia, and it was a shame. If there was a team that I wanted to see medal alongside Australia, it was Slovenia, so it was a shame that it had to come down to the bronze medal match between the two of us, but I think for Slovenia to finish fourth, with Luka still entering his prime and 15 years left of his prime, and seemingly wanting to win a medal with Slovenia, whether it comes at the Olympics, the World Cup, or whether it comes at Eurobasket again, they're going to win something. If you enjoyed that kind of video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, like the video. I can make more videos like this, or I don't have to, whatever. It took a while to make, so a like would be much appreciated. Have a great day. Bye.